Trey comes to the top. Hayward on a tight curl. Catch and shoot. Fading back. Swish! A career high. 35 for Gordon Hayward. And the crowd comes to its feet in admiration.
G-Time still live on the USA basketball team. A fun day with the sponsors yesterday, ducking the weather and all. We'll talk about all that, plus some interesting ways in which NBA teams score. That's all coming up, plus your questions on today's edition of Tip-Off. How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA Insider. Just new feature on Google. I can now put this whole show in black and white today. Feel very old school now. Do I have to become like Broadcaster Boy? Podcasting in black and white is video podcasting seems somewhat. I can spotlight myself and make everything else very hazy now on features. I think that seems a little scary to anyone this early in the morning. Or I can enhance it. This maybe looks better. Though I like the spotlight because it gets rid of my mess behind me. All right, hope you're well, wherever you may be listening to this, whenever you may be tuning in, however you may be consuming it, whether you're on your run, at the gym, on an airplane, you download it, sitting at work, supposed to be working. I appreciate you taking the time very much to do that. Yesterday was the Jazz Sponsors Golf Tournament. Those are, they really are probably as important a group of people as there are in the Jazz family. Frankly, in this day and age, economically, without the sponsors, I'm not sure you have a team. And without the sponsorship body in this marketplace, I'm not sure you have a team. And this is, we're different. We don't have major companies. We don't have Microsoft and Amazon and Boeing and Oracle and, major Google and all these major companies. Levi Strauss dominating the marketplace. So these are regular people that are good down-home Utah folks with their companies and parts of our community as the Jazz, and it's always fun to get together with them, see them, play a little golf tournament. Then Greg Miller spoke eloquently to them about the process of hiring Quinn and where he sees the franchise going, and then Quinn got up and actually had to eventually be so excited to talk basketball, he actually had to eventually be taken off the stage because he was so fired up. I don't think he said anything really controversial or anything. Those are, somewhat private settings. I don't want to be the guy who sits in those meetings and then turns around and shares all of it. I think it would ruin some of that environment. But he didn't. I don't think there was anything earth-shattering. But his passion and energy toward basketball was evident. He got to one point where he started talking about Derek and whether we use him this way and whether that would help out, and maybe that gets more at Derek. What about Ennis? What else if we do this with Ennis? And you could just see, Quinn and the excitement level he has when he's sitting in his coach's office, whether he's with Dennis or Justin Zanuck or some of his assistant coaches, and he starts firing up about a player and talking about how he might use them and what they might do, and you can see the passion and energy that he certainly has toward the game, toward creating circumstances, toward trying to put his players in the best scenario. He got asked his starting lineup. He didn't really want to answer it, but then I think he decided, I'll just go with the returning 5 guys and light a fire under everyone else. And then he got asked the best player on the team in 2 years, which he didn't answer. But it's an interesting question. I had a good conversation with Hans and Scotty G about it. That podcast is actually probably available for you at 1280sports.com or 1280thezone.com. I'll see if I can find that. And podcast it out for you, because I thought that was a fun conversation yesterday with Hans. I really like Hans's way he's worked to understand basketball and how he has really thinks things through. I mean, I was trying to just play devil's advocate with him yesterday, but all of his thought processes were so good that there wasn't a lot to refute. So it's fun. I mean, just to see that passion he had. Who is the Jazz best player in 2 years? I think it's still Gordon, and I think something that's worth us understanding is to look at Gordon today at 6'8", now 230, and realize how skinny he was when he came as a sophomore in college after 2 years at Butler. I remember vividly being at the workout with Ross Seiler, then of the Salt Lake Tribune, and kind of looking at him and and wondering, well, I don't know if this guy can play in the NBA, not Ross Gordon, whether he can play in the NBA because he's so small and slight, and now here he is 230, and you could tell Quinn yesterday talking about was pretty excited about his body and how he looks, and you compare that to Dante Exum. And Dante Exum is 19 years old now, a young 19, and it's going to take him a few years to get his body ready to be able to take the hits and be a part of this league and handle this league before he can jump onto the scene the way that I think we're hoping he probably could or can along the way. So, big deal that Gordon Hayward is still alive. Big deal. As an NBA, as a USA basketball player. Wow, there's like a bunch of misspeaks already today. The group is down to 16. If you look at the point guards are Rose, Irving, and Lillard. The shooting guards, I really have Curry as a 2, are Curry, Thompson, and Korver. It sounds more and more like Korver's going to make this team. What a cool thing for Korver. That Harden, Hayward, and Parsons are the small forwards. Durant and Fareed are the power forwards. It's sounding more and more like Kenneth Fareed can make this team. And Anthony Davis, Plumlee, Cousins, and Drummond are going to make this team. So from what John Schumann, who has been on this as much as anyone, is very bright. What he tweeted last night is he thinks that to get this down to 12, that it comes down to Irving or Lillard as one spot that goes, DeMar DeRozan or Gordon Hayward as another one. And I really think that Gordon Hayward is a far better team player than DeMar DeRozan and has the ability to play the 2, 3, and 4. I think that gives him a real chance to make the team. And then Cousins, Drummond, or Plumlee, one of them makes the team. And if I have my numbers right on that, so that would leave you with 2 point guards, 3 shooting guards, 5, 3 small forwards, 8, and 4 front court players, 12. So that gets you there. Chandler Parsons, Klay Thompson both seem to be guarantees. There's even some talk possibly of seemingly of Klay Thompson getting to start. So they obviously think very highly of Klay and his ability to shoot and do what he's doing. Korver is a specialist. Fareed is an energy player in that realm. It's interesting. Paul George, though, being off this team changes everything. You might need a little bit more scoring here or there. You might decide that some of that length defensively. But I think it helps Hayward. And if Hayward can make this team, it's a huge deal for him. Just from first of all, he was good the other night. 7 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals in 15 minutes. He's good. But I think for him to play on this team, add that max contract, helps his status in the league. Status in the league matters. You get a few more calls. You get viewed a little bit differently. You're thought of differently. I think it gives him some confidence. Gets him playing high-level basketball for an extended period of time before he moves. He and his lovely new bride out to Salt Lake City. This is good, and I think there's a real chance that he makes this team. There's a chance that they decide to keep Lillard and Irving and Rose and have those 3 point guards, and then Hayward or DeRozan both don't make the team, and they play with Curry and Korver because one of those other guys slides to the floor, and Harden and Parsons are the team. I'm surprised. I'm going to be surprised. I'm just not a Chandler Parsons believer the way over Gordon. I will be surprised if Gordon doesn't make the team and Chandler Parsons does. I'm a little surprised why Chandler Parsons has such a steam status, but those people, John Schumann and who are around the team as much as they are, must know something simply that I don't know, and are reporting it. I could just be biased. I think Gordon's a better player than he is, and I could be dead wrong, or they could be dead wrong because they don't watch Gordon the same way we do and see him night in and night out. And his weaknesses were highlighted last year, but I do think that his weaknesses, while highlighted last year, were also a case of, this is a guy who got asked to do more than he was capable of doing, and in turn, when on a team like this, oh my gosh, I can't imagine a better scenario. Would I want Gordon Hayward on a team than a team like USA Basketball, where His athleticism can play well enough. His defensive smarts is there, and he can play with people. I think he truly, you talk about wanting to have the Mason Plumlee of this roster who fits in with the guys who are willing to score. Talk about Gordon being able to do that. I think it would be just terrific. There's an interesting parallel on Gordon, by the way, to Aaron Aflalo. We talked about this last year, is a negative going into the season and turned out to be completely accurate. That Aaron Aflalo, when he went from Denver after having those really good years, originally starting in Detroit, if you don't recall that, he then went to Orlando and became the #1 guy there, and his efficiency fell off the map a little bit. And if you recall, when we did the research at this time last year or going into the season of what happens when NBA players go from 1, 2, or 3, 4 options into main guys, everybody but Danny Granger's year in Indiana fell off the map considerably and really faded. For the case with Aflalo, he was a 50% shooter, or if I just used advanced metrics, which I would rather use, effective field goal percentage is probably a better way to look at it. But in his last 2 years in Denver, he was 3 years, 56% effective field goal percentage, 58% effective field goal percentage, 54% effective field goal percentage, and the first 2 years his usage rate was at 14%. Then he became a high usage rate player and usage rate is percentage of possessions you use while you're on the floor. Then he became a high usage rate player at 19% coming off the bench, and his effective field goal percentage slipped. This was still in Denver to 53, but it was still very good. Then in his first year in Orlando, his usage rate jumped to 22%. And he really fell off the map. He went from what we were talking about there, an effective field goal percentage. For those who don't know, effective field goal percentage, that weighs three-point shooting as well. So it's adjusted for the fact that a three-pointer is worth 1 more point than a two-pointer. Dropped to 48%. So he dropped from that 3-year run of about 55, averaging 55%, down to 48%, and he really struggled. His basic numbers, by the way, just if it's easier for you to get, he was basically a 48% shooter. He went to 44. He was basically a 40% three-point shooter. He went to 30. Pretty similar to Gordon in a lot of ways. Last year, though, his second year, now 28 years old in Orlando, having done it once before, his effective field goal percentage went back up to 52%, never returning to the 55% he was for those 2 years, but his overall shooting was at 46%, and his three-point shooting went from 30 back up to 43%, one of Aflalo's better years ever. Now in Denver, it'll be interesting to see what he does again. His usage rate was at 23%. He cut down on his turnovers a little bit. His assist rate went up. He learned how to use his teammates better, which to Gordon's credit, he already had kind of learned along the way. But, Aflalo and Hayward may have some similarities in the sense that both of them were asked to do more than is probably the right amount for them to do in their career and struggled badly with it. And now when you look at Gordon in that second year in that role, maybe you've got to flip that same storyline we used as of last year of being a negative into a positive. Gordon's younger in his career, just 24 years old, but he drops from his effective field goal percentage numbers weren't quite as the same, but he was, for those 2 years prior, he was a 50% effective field goal percentage. So he wasn't 55. He's never been as efficient as Aflalo, and he dropped to 45, but maybe we can expect him to go back to 48, 49. He becomes a pretty solid player. His usage rate, similar to Aflalo, didn't his usage rate the year prior was just as high at 22%, 23%, but it was off the bench as the primary bench scorer, and then he just didn't get it figured out as the primary guy last year. And as I said, his assist rate was really good last year. His assist rate, this is what's incredible about Gordon from a year ago. When he was coming off the bench in that lineup, his usage rate was 22%, which is high. That's the percentage of possessions your team plays used while he's on the floor. He also was assisting 17% of his teammates' field goals. Last year, he jumped that to 24%. So he actually figured out how to involve his teammates much better than he figured out how to involve himself. Just a positive thought there on where Gordon might be going. All right, a few other notes from around the league. The Hawks have hired Nevin Spahia as an assistant coach. It's another European. He's been coaching in Croatia in the Turkish league, and he'll replace Quinn Snyder, but just an interesting concept there. Sounds like the Kevin Love deal is done when the NBA store is willing to refund you the Andrew Wiggins jersey you bought if it was purchased in the last 60 days. It's a great deal for Minnesota. That they're going to get the number one pick of the draft in exchange for a guy who wants out is just a fabulous deal for Minnesota. I don't think Flip Saunders has done much right since he's taken this over, but this is really a great deal for Minnesota. Now, the problem is that they're not holding on to their superstar, which is never going to leave them in the right direction. It's probably a pretty good deal for Cleveland in an Eastern Conference that is favorless. I mean, I think it's probably Chicago's to win at this point, but otherwise Cleveland should be right there. David Aldridge wrote a piece on the offseason, had the Jazz as one of the bottom teams of offseason improvement, probably accurate in regards to our win total, but he did say this: Utah putting some good pieces together with Hayward, Favors, Enes Kanter up front, Trey Burke, Alec Burks, Exum in the backcourt, but Young has an awfully hard time winning anything substantive in this league, especially for a young team in the West. None of the aforementioned half dozen is 25-year-old is a 25-year-old vet, or 25 yet, excuse me. The 19-year-old Exum is talented to be sure, but he's got some learning to do, and he'll have to get a rapport with Burke, who's still learning the ropes of the pro game. Hood could be a high-value pick. He looked very good in Vegas, but can Snyder possibly find enough playing time for all of them? Not to mention vets Booker and Novak, but the time is coming in soon when GM Dennis Lindsey will have enough to make a move on someone's disgruntled star with legit assets to send back. So, some interesting pieces there. Ryan Knaus, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, did some interesting work at Yahoo on the stats end of things, and I wanted to grab some of it. I really was impressed. He also did some of it at Roto World. I don't know anything about Ryan, but he seems very, very bright and has done some interesting pieces. I guess he lives in Portland, Maine, was a Sonics fan, and has been writing, but I really like him, so you can follow him on Twitter. It's Ryan, Knaus. So he did an interesting piece this last week, or actually a few weeks ago, on how the types of possessions in the NBA based on synergy. Now, I really don't, there's some problems I have with this, and that is, but I really think he's done a good job. So let me clarify that. And the problem is synergy, and I've expressed this. Synergy only takes the end result of a possession. So therefore, if you run a pick and roll and you penetrate the lane and you kick to the wing for a spot up shot, it's classified as a spot up, but that's really a pick and roll. And almost everything in this league is a pick and roll. But here's what I thought was interesting. Play types, percentage of possession. 19% of possessions are now spot ups. So you just got to be able to shoot. And 21.7% of possessions finish as a pick and roll. So 15% of those 21% finish with the ball handler. And 7% of those or so, 21.7, so let's call it 22%. 7% finish with the roll man. So 22% of possessions in the NBA are coming off a pick and roll, that action without something else happening between those two men game. A little more than 18% are spot ups. So now we're at 40% of your NBA possessions are probably, in all likelihood, some pick and roll and kick of that sort. 13% of possessions are in transition. This is something that I became aware of last year, and I think we talked about a little bit. It was very eye-opening for me as the season went on last year, is truly, and Quinn is talking about picking up pace, and somebody asked at sponsors yesterday whether we're going to fast break more. And this is a funny concept because it is stunning how few, and I guess it really depends how you define it, but how few fast break possessions there are in the NBA. And there really are very few fast break possessions in the NBA. And that probably should jump out to everybody when you start to think about the game. I mean, if you go and take just an average team in the NBA and look at how they allocate their possessions, you're going to be stunned to find out how few possessions on a given night are actually fast break. I mean, I think it's somewhere in the range of 9 possessions a game is kind of the league, 8.5 possessions of fast break a game is the league average. only 8.5 or 9. Now, in this, they're saying 13.6%. So it depends on how you're defining possessions, because 13% of 8 would be too low. I'm saying it's probably closer to 10 or even 9%. Of possessions, depending on whose data you're working on. But so when Quinn is talking about picking up the pace, and really you're just trying to get into an early offense, have an advantage, play with the pass to continue that advantage, and then take advantage of that at some point. And then that gets to a great question Gordon Monson asked Dennis Lindsay. This is all great. What else you can't make your shots? If you just can't make the plays, it doesn't matter. Post-ups in the league have become 10% of the league, according to this work by Ryan. Isolations are 8 point. Actually, let me do something. Let me screen share this page with you for those people that are on the podcast or watching the video version of the podcast. It will make it a better experience. I think you have it up now. Yeah. So 10% are post-ups. Isolation's about 9%. Then the other stuff is off a cut, other, offensive rebound. Offensive rebound's only 6%. Now, that's an interesting game. We get into an interesting game here. I still really have some questions on the value of offensive rebounding. The in thing is to get back and stop everybody in transition and keep that number of transition possessions down. Now, we probably allowed a lot of transition last year. If you're allowing one or two more of that, that's a problem. But the other angle on this is whether or not in some way you can try to get an extra offensive possession or two might help out with your offense. So that's, I think, an interesting way to look at it. Bye, guys. Sorry, the in-laws are leaving. I thought they were leaving at 9. I guess they're leaving at 8:45. So I'll wrap this thing up here in a second so I can hopefully go give them a hug. But anyway, the league-wide points per possession by play type, where if you can get somebody moving off a cut was the best and transition's the highest, that's why you want to cut. But look, offensive rebounding's equally as high. So you get into a good debate if you can, if you go grab 1 or 2 extra offensive rebounds, you're really helping yourself out. And the eye-opener here is look at post-up, 0.86 points per game. And even the pick-and-roll ball handler, not as high as you would think. Spot-up, if you're getting that good look here, pretty high at 0.98. Spot-up's only 0.86 points per game. But transition, getting guys on the move, pick and roll, getting with the man rolling to the basket, offensive rebounds seem to be the best ways to score. So Ryan did some really good work here. You can check it out. And that wraps up today's edition of Tip Off. Hope you're all well. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to all the sponsors who were at the event the other day. We always appreciate having you there and being a part of it as well. So thank you. Be back with you tomorrow. We'll look at some of these other angles from a defensive standpoint, who is best at things. Ryan's done a lot of good work. We'll build off for the rest of the week. See ya.